Okay, so I've made this private. I know that I easily get triggered if someone watches my video as I'm talking. Um, I'm not exactly sure why that is, because I don't necessarily have a problem talking in front of people. Um, I have spoken in front of groups, I've spoken at church. I now wonder if um, it has something to do with uh, talking about issues that are inspiring and moral. Um, so we're a minute and 30 seconds in, and I haven't really talked about anything. And I just burped, which may be disgusting for some people. It's really more like a belch, kind of like what Barney would do in a Simpsons TV show. I actually do that quite frequently. There's something going on with my stomach where gas just piles up. I think it may have something to do with overeating, although I know that even if I don't overeat, there's still a lot of gas. But anyway, I'm sure this is going to be disgusting to people in many ways, and I don't think this is a good use of people's time necessarily. Uh, I think that people who would be interested in what I have to say um, may have this addiction where you get something out of feeling sorry for someone who is pretty low. It's kind of like a mothering type of thing, and not in a good way. But I will also say that I think that people that want to be educated may also be attracted to what I have to say, because what I want to talk about is basically how depraved I am and my thought process. And um, someone that wants to be educated as to why someone fails in life may want to hear what I have to say. And I have to tell that person, even though they probably already know, um, that what I have to say is probably going to be checkered with lies and untruths and falsehoods, because I don't really understand what's happening. Um, you're hearing, I don't know if this is the appropriate expression here, but you're hearing from the horse's mouth. You're hearing um, an extremely flawed person talk about his flaws, and you probably are not going to get a very good picture of what's really wrong with me from what I say. Or, in other words, you can't necessarily trust my message or the way that I express myself, because I am riddled with falsehood. I'm riddled with, false beliefs. I rely on false beliefs to carry me through the day. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but basically, as I understand it, I do truly believe that we are fallen people. It doesn't mean that now there are people. I've got to burp again. Sorry. I've developed a method where I kind of make my burps very as silent as can be. But anyway, what was I talking about? Shoot, I think I forgot what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to mention this other thing. The reason I'm wearing a hat is because my hair is a mess. I guess it doesn't look that bad. I am ashamed of my baldness, somewhat. Um, I think there can be a look where, this haggard look, which can be attractive. And I think I do. I am interested in being attractive. I think some women like that I'm kind of a big guy, and, women that are looking for big guys are not turned off to me. And I get something out of that sometimes. But I also kind of feel what lies underneath that, which is an insecurity. Um, because just like I am attracted to all manner of women, um, I know that that is based in feelings of insecurity that I have, a certain desire where I want something from people. Anyway, I just remember what I wanted to say, which is that, we live in a fallen state. And I want to be clear and say that not everyone, um, what am I saying? I'm sorry. Um, it's not to say that it is an inevitable thing that you would be fallen. I grew up in a church. I'll tell you basically the ideology of the church I grew up in. Um, God created a universe and people to dwell in that universe. It's actually interesting to me. These are the questions that I contemplate. Did God create the universe first or people? I believe that God created people first. And I think that's somewhat relevant, but it's not terribly important. But God created a universe and people to dwell in that universe. And God gave us a choice. God gave us this thing which Jesus calls the gift of free will. But in the context of, um, the beliefs I had when I was growing up in the Unification Church, um, God gave us free will. And with that free will, we have the choice to decide to do a loving action or commit an unloving action, which is sin. And the first sin, according to the Unification Church, and the holy book of the Unification Church, which is the divine principle, the first sin was actually a sexual sin. Sun Myung Moon, who is the author behind the divine principle, I almost said divine truth, says that there was a period of growth that Adam and Eve were meant to go through. And after that period of growth, and through that period of growth, they would achieve maturity, a state of maturity. And it was their destiny to have a joyful sexual relationship, a loving sexual relationship. It's so hard to say sexual. I never realized, like, it's hard to say sex and bring up sex in general, but it's also hard to say sexual. Anyway. But anyway, so having achieved a state of perfection or maturity, at that point, Adam and Eve would have the authority and the privilege to have, engage in joyful lovemaking. But what they did, according to Sun Myung Moon, is they had an illicit sexual relationship without the authority of maturity. So that's a little, it's a little strange. But what I was always struck by and convinced by was the fact that, in the Bible, there is a there is the description of Adam and Eve putting leaves over their loins to, quote, hide themselves. And that is a very convincing thing to believe that, it was a sexual sin. But, who knows how true the Bible is anyway. But I just realized that this is a huge tangent that I'm going on. I just faulted my father yesterday for going on tangents, and now I'm going on one. I was having a discussion with my father, and he was going on so long about one question that I had asked, and I was like, oh God, I feel like I'm being bludgeoned. Anyway, so that's another thing that, it might be hard to watch this video because I do go on tangents, and it's hard for me to stick to a point. And as you can tell, I'm not making my points very well because I have a lot of, my diet's not good. My whole attitude in life is really debased right now. So I kind of feel bad about myself. I question whether it's even meaningful to make this video. And all that was just a tangential to the tangent that I was making. But I'm going to keep on going here. Yep. So anyway, that's basically the unification church thing. And from that point of the fall, a providence was basically established, which was like a dispensation. I don't even know what dispensation or providence really means, but like a process was started where human beings that grew up in a fallen state could be liberated from that fallen state and be brought back to God. So that basically is the providence. And there were many figures in history, many moments, according to Sun Myung Moon, where people could be, restored to a position of, their original position of perfection. So that is the fall. So the important thing to realize from, what I described, what is basically the unification ideology, and I call it an ideology because it's not necessarily the truth in my mind, although it has aspects of the truth. I believe what I'm going to tell you now is the actual truth. So I know that I only believe that that's the truth. It has hit my heart as though it's the truth, but I can't tell you for a certainty it is the truth. Jesus would tell you, the man in Australia, Alan John Miller, would tell you that it is a truth. And any spirits in the spirit world who know would probably tell you that it is a truth. And I think you could even hear from God that it is a truth. But I just don't happen to know, as far as I'm aware, that it is the truth. But the important thing in what I told you is that, it is not a given that we are fallen. And I want to mention this because I think there are many Christians, most Christians, I dare say, and perhaps even Muslims, I'm not sure. I think Buddhists, to some extent, have this idea that there's nothing you can do. You're fallen. You are imperfect, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it is. You can strive for perfection, but you can't attain perfection. And personally, I think this is a horrible, horrible, horrible concept to hold. I don't have very many claims to, I can't claim that I live my truth or live a loving lifestyle, or I can't claim to be an example. I really don't think I am an example because the way that I live is very self-absorbed, and I exist in a perpetually angry state. But I will say that I'm happy, I'm proud of the fact that I feel very strongly about the idea that you can attain perfection. You can better yourself. You can improve yourself from a state of whatever you want to call it, from a fallen state or from a state of depravity, of degradation, a flawed state. You can unravel your flaws and your faults and achieve perfection. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm excited that I have that belief firmly implanted in my soul. I love that. Like, I don't know. Like I look at people. I don't know why I'm emotional right now, but I look at people and I can't believe that they actually believe there's something they can do. I mean, I don't do very much to better myself, but I will hang on to the belief that I can change, and it's only a matter of my choice and my decision that I don't. Because I think it's, I think that's because I believe that God is very loving in that respect, and I don't believe that God would do such a thing where God wouldn't say, "You are in a fallen state, and that's that. You can be loyal to me, you can worship me, but you will remain in your fallen state. That's it." That is, I don't know, that is so horrific to me. And it's not, what God would do to me. But I say that, and then I'm going to tell you this other thing, which is what I believe now, which is very similar to what I was raised with. So it makes sense that I would gravitate towards what I now believe. So about 4 years ago, maybe 5 now, I found the divine truth. I found Jesus. Jesus and his soulmate Mary Magdalene and a few other, some notable, some not notable figures in history have returned. That is, they, as souls, departed from the earth. Their physical bodies departed from the earth, and they lived a life in the spirit world for a period of time with their soul and their spirit bodies, and they achieved a position which Jesus calls a soul union, in which it's actually a position, it's actually a state where you are united with your soulmate partner, so that you are no longer two individuals, you are now one. So for whatever reason, God has split the soul like two cells into, I'm searching for words to describe this. Don't take my word for it, but God, there's a process where the soul was split into two physical bodies and two spirit bodies. Usually a man and a woman, a heterosexual couple, but sometimes, or about 10% of the time, it's a homosexual soul. I love talking about it because this is something people don't understand. It's amazing. If this is the truth, I want to tell everybody about this. So for whatever reason, God did that, and it was God's plan and God's wish that these two parts would find each other and unite. And that is a process that apparently can be achieved on the earth, where you can achieve a soulmate union and a soul union. But no one has achieved that on earth. The only people that have done it was first Jesus and his soulmate partner, Mary Magdalene. And they did that while they were in the spirit world. And also, as far as we know, 6 other souls. So 12 other people would be what it is. And in that state, you actually, in much the same way that at the moment of your death, your physical death, you lose your physical body and you pass to the spirit realm. At the moment of soul union, you no longer need your spirit body. So the spirit body that has been with you ever since the moment of your own conception on the earth, the spirit body that was attached to your soul even through your time on earth with your physical body, and the spirit body that you used throughout your period in the spirit world up until the soulmate union, the soul union, you no longer have that spirit body. Now you can create spirit bodies, if you want to, talk to other people in the spirit realm and they feel more comfortable interfacing with, another spirit, not a soul that they can't see, then you can create a spirit body for their benefit. But the original spirit body that you had up until the moment of soul union, you no longer have somehow. It's just, it, goes back into its composite parts. So, I'm doing my best to describe something I have never seen and I've only heard. So, do with it what you will. But these, Jesus and Mary and these other souls have decided to return, and I found them. And lucky me. I mean, I feel privileged to have found these people and the truth that they are spreading. It's a lot of it had to do with the fact that I wanted to know who Jesus was, because I felt that it was so essential to understanding, the truth of the universe, the truth that is relevant to my life. But anyway, I found them, and so this is what this man says. Basically, the fall of man did exist, did happen, or not exist, but did happen, did occur, and it wasn't so much a sexual sin that caused it. It was the decision that these two people, Adam and Eve, which really are, he calls a man and a man. Apparently, that's what they're called. I told my father about this in an email, and he said, well, it really should be a man and a woman. Like their name is literally a man and a man. AMON and AMAN. And I think a man is actually Adam and a man is actually Eve. So I don't know how that works, phonetically. These are there's a lot of things that, it's hard to, like, it almost seems it's almost, humorous and comical. I don't know. I've never met a man and a man, so I can't tell you. But, I do believe what this man, who I believe is Jesus, is saying. So, yeah. What am I talking about? So it's not so much a sexual sin that occurred in the fall. It was a sin wherein these two first human ancestors chose to be reliant on themselves as opposed to being reliant on God. So we have the choice to rely on God and to believe that God will provide in every aspect and facet of life. But we also have the choice to rely on ourselves and to believe that we can provide, ourselves with all the elements that we need to live or to enjoy our lives. And we can. And we can actually achieve a state of perfection that a man and a man enjoyed. But we can't go any further than that. And that's an important point. You can become the perfect natural man, as Jesus would put it, but you cannot become a divine soul, which is, a possibility for you and, a potential for you. And it's kind of a shame if you don't adopt or, pursue that potential. So I don't know if that makes sense. Take it as you may. Basically, I'm describing, this is what free will is. You have a choice to, these aren't the terms that Jesus would use, but, in my flawed state, I would use them. You have the choice to choose good or to choose evil. That's really the ultimate choice. You have the choice to, as Jesus would say, you have the choice to choose love or to choose what is not love, what is unloving. And everything that is unloving and everything that is sinful is something that we have created. In so much as we have the ability to create, we can create evil and harm for ourselves and sin. It's very hard for me to breathe and talk. I don't know if you've noticed that it's been hard for me to do that, but that's true. So we exist in this fallen state, and we can restore ourselves. And, it's taken me a while to say this. I don't even remember why I started talking about it, but basically, emotional addiction. When you make the wrong choice, when you make a choice out of error, you then I don't know how to say it. You experience pain. At that point, you experience pain. The first time you do it is the first time you experience pain. And we have the choice to, like in the case of someone harming you, you may feel a twinge of pain where you experience pain, but it's not, you don't, like you swallow it and poop it out. I don't know. You can allow it to flow through your soul. So basically, that is a quality of your soul, that it is a canister that can experience pain. But this canister has not only a lid, but it also has a release valve. And you can admit pain, but you can also admit joy into that canister, which is your soul. And you can also release it. And the point is that, over time, with another quality of your soul is memory. And if you keep on doing the things that allow you to experience joy, then perhaps you have learned a valuable lesson, which is that not only is joy something that has been made available to you, but you can continue to make actions to take steps to experience yet more joy, that you can perpetually actually experience joy. And that is a state of at-one-ment with God, where you perpetually experience joy in your life. What a beautiful thing. What an absolutely beautiful thing. And that is, by the way, a state beyond the perfect natural man. That is something that a man and a man did not enjoy while on the earth. They never achieved. So basically what I'm talking about is there's the perfection of the perfect natural man, and then there's a level of perfection beyond. Now that's hard to, you might think perfect is perfect. How can you be more perfect than perfect? Well, you'd have to submit, to this idea. I mean, like we don't understand perfection as far as the perfection that God has destined for us. As far as the initial Bible scholars described Adam and Eve as being a state of perfection, all that you have to know is that there is something beyond that state that they describe. So when Jesus talks about the perfect natural man, he will also make mention of the fact that there is a state beyond that. And that is actually a state of perpetual growth, so long as you choose to grow. Growth is a choice, just as ignorance is a choice. So what am I saying here? I don't want to lose it. Your soul is a canister. And, if you experience harm from another person, at that moment you will feel a twinge of pain. And the real thing that you should fear, essentially, is that you don't allow that pain, that twinge to flow through you. At the moment that you choose a life where you don't allow that pain to pass through you, you are you are oh, man, I have to yawn because I'm not getting enough air. Oh, I can't yawn completely. So basically, what I'm saying is that the thing that is of concern is that, um, if you allow pain to manifest itself in your soul, then you will um, make decisions, um, that are the result of the experience of pain in your soul. So we have like these layers of pain in ourselves, and it starts out as grief. And if we don't experience grief, and grief is a really interesting thing, like sadness. Like sadness is not overtly manipulative. It can be, but like just the experience of sadness. If you were to actually feel that, you would probably cry. You would like I felt some sadness earlier in this video. I found myself crying over something. I forget what it was about, but um, that is the experience of sadness, and it's not like super destructive, as far as I know. It's when you hold on to that sadness that moments, events appear in your life that remind you of this pain of sadness that's in your soul. And at that point, because you've already made the decision not to experience that sadness, now you have a fear. Like fear is this frantic feeling where you will do everything you can to not um, experience the sadness. This is my best understanding of it. So again, take it as you will. But what's the natural consequence of not feeling your fear? So you don't feel your sadness, you don't feel the fear that is a layer above that sadness. The natural consequence is that you want to deaden your fear. You want to deaden this frantic state that you are in. And how do you do that? You choose an addictive practice. You choose an addiction. So for me, it's sugar. This is what I'm drinking today. Premium brewed green tea, high fructose corn syrup, honey. That's the first three ingredients. Orange juice, sugar, sugar, sugar. For the last 20 days since I took a personal leave from my job, I've been consuming nothing but sugar and starchy foods and heavy oil-laden foods, junk foods. The only vegetables or fruits that I've had are byproducts in whatever I eat. Like I had some potato soup yesterday, and there were little bits of celery in there, but it was mostly starch. So that's why I look the way I look. I think I've put on about 10 to 20 pounds. I don't look very good, and it's because of the choice that I've made. So this all comes back around to what I said earlier, which is that you either have an addiction where you want to feel sorry for people and you want to get whatever you feel you can get from someone that is down on themselves, someone that is pitying themselves, someone that is throwing a pity party. And that would be unfortunate if you are watching this because you want to mother me, because you want to, tell me everything is going to be okay. Then that's perhaps not a very good thing. But if you can keep in mind that um, I'm coming from a very flawed condition, and much of what I say, I don't quite understand. And you know, I may not know how truthful I'm being. Um, then you can get something out of this. Then you can watch a man destroy himself and understand the psychology behind his own destruction. So what I'm going to do for you now, is I am going to go to my Chase app, Chase Bank, and I'm going to check my my bank account. Well, Theo, that is rather interesting. I'm being sarcastic. So I'm going into my Chase Bank account. I'm afraid that I may have as much as $200 or maybe $300, but anyway, it's dwindling. This is not good. I'm so scared. I have $317.21 in my bank account. Not as bad as I thought, but for the past 20 days, I have been using money for nothing but junk food, and yeah, pretty much nothing but junk food. And I spent $400 on junk food in the past 20 days. And this is a man who is contemplating the end of his job. And I can't, I've thought of a bunch of different ideas that I can, I can choose any one of these good ideas and act and have faith that something will come from it. But, even though an idea might come to me, this is the sin. I may have an idea presented to me from one of my spirit guides or just from my own, because, even though we're fallen, we always have the choice to do the right thing. So, I may have come up with a great idea where if I were to act on it, then I can experience, abundance and a way to restore myself from this flawed state. But I don't act on it. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm engaging in pity, self-pity, and belief in nihilism, and I'm choosing, the notion that I cannot experience meaning from any action that I do. And when I do that, I say that, well, God's a bastard, It's incredible how arrogant I can become. And I'm sure that I do this quite often where, I say, God, everything that you do with this seems good. Like the fact that you created us, you created these beings that it could experience free will, and we could make the choice to do good things or not. And we always have a road back, a dispensation where we can, return from a state of fallen, of being of the fall, of whatever. All these things that you've done are great, but this is not good. And I will find and I will nitpick. I will discover something that I don't agree with that God has done. And in so doing, I am saying that God is somehow imperfect, that God didn't think of that. And that is an inherently unfaithful position to be in. This is the sinful state that I'm in. I don't trust God. I don't trust God's goodness. I don't trust that if I apply myself and I, walk in righteousness, and I don't listen to people that want to keep me from inheriting, my birthright, which is to, follow my passions in life and seek God's love, to become, to attain the state of beyond the perfection of a natural man into a state of at-one-ment with God, where I have no sadness, I have no grief, I have no fear, I have none of those things. Um, if I don't listen to the haters, then I can get there. But instead, I choose to have a pity party. I choose to be arrogant. I choose to say, God, you really didn't know what you're doing when you did this. I feel so bad right now. I've gone 40 minutes and I haven't really talked about the stuff I wanted to talk about as far as I'm aware. I mean, there's so much that I wanted to talk about. I didn't really have plans that this video would be coherent. But what I'm really finding troublesome right now is the fact that it's hard to breathe. A lot of times when I eat, I'm laying down on my stomach on my bed, and I'm eating like this, and I'm putting shoveling food into my mouth, and it's going horizontally into my digestive system, which is probably isn't very good, and it blocks my airways and my lungs, and now I'm experiencing issues with breathing, and it's no one else's fault. And I'm feeling some pain in my knees, and I'm feeling pain in my hips, and it's hard to walk down the stairs because my joints are arthritis is getting the best of me because of my bad diet. And who do I have to blame? Can I blame my mom? Can I blame my dad? Can I blame you? Can I blame my friends? Can I blame the postman? No, I can only blame myself. I'm 33 years old. I have a stout mind. I'm completely able for the most part. I know now that I can relieve myself of all of my pain, of all of my imperfections in my body, even if I was born, with a birth defect. I can, if I was exposed to the truth, and I only am exposed to the truth if I seek it out. So you can be a paraplegic and you can have a strong desire to learn and discover the truth of God, God's divine truth. I finally breathed, and I feel my heart's kind of heavy, but I finally breathed what I needed to breathe. Anyway, you can be a paraplegic and have a strong desire to know the truth. And once you find it, what the truth basically is that if you heal all of your emotional injuries, if you repent for all of your sins. So when I talk about emotional injuries, I'm talking about something that someone has done to you and they have harmed you in some way. And I'm not talking about physical harm necessarily. Even if you were beaten or slapped or, someone stuck a knife in you, whatever happened, the real pain is the pain of that act, the desire that someone had to hurt you. That is what's going to stick with you unless you allow it to be released through the release valve in your soul. So as far as I'm aware, it's very easy to heal, injuries in yourself, physical injuries. But what's more difficult is to heal your spiritual injuries, you could say, your emotional injuries. So, yeah. So you can be a paraplegic and find the truth and realize that all of your physical ailments, your inability to walk, has to do with some emotion that you're holding on to. And if you really go to God and ask God, please help me to feel this emotional injury that I have, that has been stuck with me ever since I was in the womb. From the time I, entered the world, my parents and society and the world around me started pummeling my poor innocent soul with all of this garbage, these garbage emotions. And now here I am, and I don't know what to do. Or, I don't know what is really wrong with me. Please help me to find out. I want to take responsibility for all the pain that I have allowed to stick with me up until this point. I don't think I'm getting it exactly right, but basically, if you have that strong desire, God, please help me to feel the emotions that keep me in this state of paraplegia, where I can't walk. Please help me. God will help you if you have that determined attitude, that strong, strong desire, and you will be relieved of your paraplegia. And so, as it is with me, like right now, I have a sciatic nerve pain, and because I have that sciatic nerve pain, it was too hard to sit the 8 hours at work. It became too difficult for me to sit because it was so painful. Excuse me. It was very difficult to sit. I had a lot of pain sitting down, and I could have felt that pain, and I did try, but not enough. My desire was not strong enough to feel the pain. And so it became too much, and I had to stop working. And, I could have done more in my personal life. I could have moved the muscles and ligaments and bones in that area to feel the pain and to, and I could have cried and really felt what it made me feel in the moment when that pain came up. But instead, I chose not to do that. I chose to keep on going. I chose to deaden those emotions by continuing my addictions, by keeping on eating junk food and watching videos after videos on YouTube, and just going into my, just engaging in addictions. So, and I think the real problem now is that I'm shaming myself for not having the wherewithal to find a way out of this. I don't give myself enough credit. Instead of just accepting that I don't want to take responsibility, that it's really too difficult for me to take responsibility. See, this is where it gets kind of weird and contradictory. Like, I'm not sure. I might be getting into falsehood realm here. Like, I could at any moment just feel. I could stop this whole video stream and say, what? Now I can feel. Yes, I'm in a library full of people. And yes, if I start ranting and raving and, whatever, people will kick me out. But okay, I get kicked out. So now I'm on the street, and I'm ranting and raving and crying and, bleeding and, punching the ground, and my knuckles are bleeding and I'm going crazy. So someone maybe calls the cops, and maybe the cops, have a talking to me or something, or maybe they handcuff me, or maybe they don't. Maybe I just keep on crying back to my apartment, or I just spend hours in the park just wailing, or, and in the end, it'll work out. I can just choose to have faith. Yes, I'm acting crazy now, but my whole life has been crazy. I'm choosing craziness all the time. I'm choosing to hold on to these emotions that handicap me, as opposed, in opposition to what I ought to be doing, which is feeling them. I don't want to feel it. And that was kind of a struggle at work, where I was so concerned about how people would see me if I felt my feelings at work. And Jesus talked about his own path, where he, when he stopped working his business, I don't know why he stopped his business, but He felt that it wasn't for him anymore, and it wasn't working out. I think he was working too much. He had 3 businesses at one time, I believe, and I guess he was going through a lot of pain at that time because his family was rejecting him and stuff. But he was discovering the fact that he was actually Jesus, this historical figure, and he was having memories of who he was and why he returned in this form again. He was reborn on the earth, basically, and he did that purposefully with his soulmate. It was a choice that both of them made, and he was going through this process of realizing that, and I don't think he could have held on to the same lifestyle that he had. So what he did, he found a different job, and he started, when he wasn't working, he was feeling his emotions, just crying and experiencing terror. I'll never forget, one thing that he said. He'd have moments where he would just, the experience of terror and the experience of, horror or extreme fear. Terror is like an extreme fear, which we all have. You have it. Don't think you don't. I've experienced it once. Like, I don't know if I can do it justice here, but it's like, it's kind of like that. It's just like imagine a deer in the headlights, or like a rabbit, running from a predator, and the claws of the predatory bird is like nipping at, is at the heels of the rabbit. It's about, it's about to face its fate of death. The rabbit is about to face that. Imagine being on the top of, the highest building in the world, and there's no fence to keep you from falling, and the wind is strong, and you're teetering, and there's someone behind you that says, "I'm about to push you," and you feel their hand on your back. You're on the edge, teetering. You feel their hand. Imagine even falling. I think that this may be a little bit funny, but I imagine that there might be some relief once you actually fall off the edge. It's funny because I saw this. I was listening to this amazing thing. I don't want to go on another tangent. No, I'm not going to do that. But after you actually fall off that edge, after having teetered and after having been pushed, and you're actually falling, I imagine some feeling of relief may at that point come, wash over you. Now you know what's going to happen. You're going to die. There's not much you can do about it. Before, you were desperately struggling and attempting to cling to your life. And now, you have the cool-headedness of certainty that, you don't know how to prevent your own death. There is no Superman that is going to, or Spider-Man that's going to, prevent you from falling and meeting death. So on the ground, that is like, that feeling is like, it's one little moment. It's like an eighth of a second, that feeling. And then you're gone. You've disconnected from your physical body. I don't think you linger much longer. In fact, I think some people actually exit their physical body before death. I mean, there are. I think the being scared to death is actually a thing where something is so horrifying you exit your body, but that might be more like an out of body experience. Like I believe that this is hard for me to talk about because people see me as a pedophile. So now every time I mention a child, it's what I'm saying is invalidated and means nothing. But I'm going to say it anyway, even though people have that feeling. Some people may have that feeling towards me. But a child that experiences a horrific event, like being molested, um, being raped, being taken advantage of sexually. Um, as I understand it, many spirits are there to help them. Loving spirits are there to help them to not experience the full effect of that pain, because it's just so crushing, and they don't really deserve it. And God knows that, and God wants to help them. And so what happens is spirits assist them in exiting their body at the moments of extreme uh, harm that they're experiencing. Um, so now I want to unravel and try and go back here. But imagine that is terror. We've all been terrified. The world is terrifying. People are terrifying. The reality of the the condition of the world as it is horrifying. It's terrifying. The way people treat each other is terrifying. I'm listening to this guy named Owen Benjamin. He finally discovered that we never went to the moon. I think that's funny, because it's funny to say that, because there are people who may be watching this who think, well, of course we went to the moon, Theo. Oh, geez, you're just crazy. Jesus actually believes that we went to the moon, and I think he's dead wrong. He's dead wrong. And yes, that's kind of a mind screw that the man that I trust in so many ways believes that we went to the moon. I believe that couldn't be further from the truth. If you look at it, it's ridiculous. The whole notion that we went to the moon, that this little craft landed on the moon, and there was a camera there to watch it land before the landing occurred, and a camera to watch it leave. And we have that footage for some reason. And there was this little hovercraft that it, contained, 4 or 5 people or whatever, maybe three people. And it contained not only those 3 people, but it also had a little, vehicle that farted out of this little craft, and they went around the surface of the moon in this little vehicle. Why is that kind of footage not regularly shown now in the news? Because it's fucking crazy. The whole notion. What happens when a rocket blasts off from Florida, from the peninsula of Florida, and goes in the sky in this arc? What's happening is it's going into the ocean. It's blasting off like this, and then at some point it arcs. You're losing sight of it. It's like, wait, it kind of looks like it's arcing. What's happening? It's actually going into the ocean. Anyway, Owen Benjamin finally figured it out. He saw the lie. He saw through the lies to see that we never went to the moon. Who's to say what the moon is? A lot of people say, okay, well, we didn't go to the moon, but that was just a cover for actual missions to the moon. Well, you may believe that until you see that it doesn't even make sense that we live on a spinning globe. But, I know that people will say, well, Theo, you're just ignorant. You don't know. I don't know why you think this crazy conspiracy theory, but you're misguided. I kind of look misguided. I kind of look like the kind of person, not only am I a bold, fat, obese, insecure man in his early 30s, jobless, but I believe we never went to the moon. I'm the last person that many people would believe, because I don't hold a respectable position. But I'm completely happy not believing it. I don't know what started first, the crushing lack of self-confidence, or the fact that I see through all the lies, and that makes me distrust the world so much that I can no longer operate in the world. I don't know if that's a good thing. I believe that God would like me to operate in this world. And something about that quote from Jesus. This is relevant to what I want to say because this has a lot to do with everything that I want to talk about. Be in the world, but not of the world. What does that mean? I don't freaking know, man. I don't know. What does it mean to be in the world, but not of the world? Let's find the actual quote, not the interpretation. I can't. It's not coming up. Well, I'll just click on the first link that I find. When I looked at my bank account earlier, I was fully expecting to drop into extreme fear, and I was hoping that would be evident, and we could learn something about it together. Okay, John 1. What is? Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. That makes sense to me. Corinthians 1. I wrote you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. I did not at all mean with the immoral people of this world, or with the covetous and swindlers, or with idolaters, for then you would have to go out of the world. This is not what Jesus said. Let's go to what Jesus said. John 15:19. If you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, because of this, the world hates you. Feel some emotions after that. John 17:14-16. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Is there anything closer to what he said? We are called to be in the world, but not of the world. For some reason, they're not showing the actual quote. Let me try reading this. The heading is, in the world, it's our point of location. Paul was right when he said that we would have to leave the world altogether if we wanted to truly separate ourselves from immoral, worldly people. That's not what God is asking us to do. The fact that you might be in a location where your Christian worldview is being challenged is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, God may have placed you there so you can have a positive impact on those who don't yet know Jesus, or at least learn from the culture so you can influence it later. So while my wife and I were located in front of our laptop watching the sitcom, this was not the, okay, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, like, I get that. Like, that is my life. That is my experience. I talk about the truth as I understand it. And people reject what I'm saying. And I know that it makes sense to me that probably what's happening is, like, you know, the truth is touching their error in their heart. And if they were to absorb that truth, it would require them to reject the error. It would require them to acknowledge that the error is there, and then to say, you know, there is something legitimately wrong with me here. And if I want to accept the gift of this truth, I have to somehow remove that error. And that's too hard for many people. I mean, it's hard for me. Like, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with that Jesus talks about. For instance, I believe the earth is flat. He believes the earth is a globe. I believe we didn't go to the moon. He believes we did. You know, he actually believes that 9/11 was a hoax intended to, you know, manipulate people. I agree with him on that. But, you know, he's not willing to go to other places. And that's cool. Like, it's cool that we have disagreements. It's cool that I can't see certain things. I might be wrong on the moon and the flat earth. I haven't been able to fully prove it as far as seeing it. But I don't feel like, you know, if I look into the earth being flat, what I get is this mountain, this world. You know, I get NASA and NASA's attack dogs, which might be yourself. You know, you may be so wedded to this idea that we went to the moon that you will attack me for believing otherwise. And all I would say is, you know, don't attack. Present to me what you believe is true. And that's not an attack. To present, you know, Theo, I really think you're wrong. I really think that you have it wrong here. That's cool. But to attack me, to say, you idiot, something like of that, that's attacking. And I would recommend that you think about that. I'm presenting what I believe, and I don't intend to dominate you with what I believe. You can accept or reject what I'm saying. You can disagree or agree with what I'm saying. That's totally within your ability. If what I'm saying angers you, that's something that you have to look at. It's the reason why I tarry. Tarry, funny word. Look up the word tarry if you don't know, if you've never heard of it. I grew up with religious songs. That's why I know what tarry means. Tarry. I'm not going to look it up for you. So I understand what it means to be in a world, to attempt to live in the world where if you want to be a person of integrity, if you never desire to betray yourself, then you would present what you believe at every instance. If someone asks you what you think about something, you would tell them the truth. You wouldn't hem and haw. You wouldn't say, well, blah, 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 blah. It's only when someone doesn't actually want to know what you think. At that point, you may not tell them, because if you can see through what they're trying to do, like there are many times when the Jewish men and women would come to Jesus in his first century life, and he wouldn't share what he actually feels or believes, because he knew that's not what they really wanted. He would chastise them essentially and say, you have a wicked heart. And that's not attacking. He was just expressing the truth, and that he was doing the most loving thing at that moment. You have to understand that presenting the truth, as far as you know it, is not an attack. It's an attack when you want to dominate, you want to manipulate, you want to cajole, you want to persuade. Well, maybe not. I don't think persuade can be loving. Persuading can be loving, but cajoling and attempting to fence someone in an argument or score points, that's always based in unloving desires. So, I have a desire to exit this world. I'll be straight up about that. I think that's obvious in a lot of what I've said in my videos. My general, the general feeling that I evoke is that I'm sick and tired of this world. And I know somewhere inside of me that that's not loving. But I don't change. I'm essentially angry. I'm angry that I have to represent myself constantly to people. I do that because I want to, I don't want to betray myself. I want to be honest. But I do cower in fear. I don't enjoy it when people attack me for what I believe. And instead of embracing this life, I mean, it's an opportunity at the end of the day. Presenting the truth is that you understand. Presenting your beliefs honestly is a loving act. And every loving act that you make will bear fruits to nourish yourself. So I could embrace this lifestyle and say that, presenting my truth at every moment, presenting the truth that I understand, is the most loving thing that I can do. Will help people the most and benefit them and myself the most. But because I'm so afraid of persecution, I don't want to continue in this world the way that I'm doing. It's not only that. It's not the only reason why I want to exit this world. I mean, I know that if I go to the spirit world, I haven't shielded myself from the attack that I would feel. I only have more to pay in compensation for the sinful nature that I have, the sinful nature that I have expressed through my actions. Giving into failure, giving into defeat. If you can make a mistake and then acknowledge your mistake and learn from it and move forward, then you are committing the act of self-improvement. But if you make a mistake and you are attacked and it's painful, and then instead of feeling the pain that's in your soul and releasing it through the release valve, you hold on to it, and it begins to affect you and grind at you. And then you want to do things like avoid the world. You want to exit the world and not be in the world. So let's continue here with the second part, with the heading of the world. It's our source of information. My concern was simply that the repeated exposure to the worldview expressed in the show was having an impact on my worldview as a Christian. It was starting to change the way I think. That isn't always the case for me, but there are definitely times when I've caught myself repeating some objectionable phrase or embracing some ungodly concept simply because I heard or saw it repeatedly in some movie, cable show, or series of conversations at work. It's one thing to be located in these environments. It's another thing to draw from them as a source for information and behavior. Yeah. I think that makes sense. Like he's saying, the admonishment, essentially, be in the world, but not of the world. Let not the world be the progenitor of your behavior. Don't allow the world to influence your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions. Don't absorb the untruths that you see. The movies will tell you, whenever I see God being, the subject of God being presented in a movie, it's usually very false. It's mired by contempt and it's just not right. I don't know what else. I was going to say it's not logos, which is something that Owen Benjamin likes to say. And I would say, yeah, that's true. It's not like the order of the universe. It's not of God. People accept the nonsense. And when you accept the nonsense, you are being of the world. You are allowing the collective fallen state to make its impression on you. The fallen state of the world to impress upon you. And don't do that. So now I would just say also that my problem is that I see the violence, the violent nature that people have. I see the, predation, the frantic competition. I see the abuse and the indifference and the facade that people have. And instead of adopting the faithful position that, yes, such is, the reality, but there is hope. There is God. God's providence works perfectly. There is a dispensation for every last one of these people that chooses not to live in love. And I can't change people, but I can, I can improve myself and become a better person myself. Instead of languishing in resentment, I can improve myself. But as it happens, I don't do that. Instead of opting to improve myself, to be a shining example, whether my light is appropriately acknowledged as a beautiful light by people or not. That doesn't stop me from being a shining example. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I mean, I honestly have a pretty, I think I have a pretty healthy awareness of how destructive to myself and everyone else is my self-absorption in this world. I don't move, I don't act. I made a video once about how many women tie their worth to raising children. Well, they ought to have a healthy understanding that they are a beautiful child of God. That is the best way to realize your actual worth, and upon that foundation, move forward in your life. But what many women do is they say, if I'm not good enough until I have a child, and they raise that child. And many men have that too, to some degree, but it's more what I believe, like, major flaw that many men have is the one that I have, which is that if you're not working, you're nothing, you're shit, you're nobody. And I feel a lot of depression from the fact that I don't have. I can get work, but I'd rather languish in my unemployment, and that makes me pathetic. So I'm tying my worth to being employed or being unemployed. I know that some people are screaming at their screen right now and saying, Theo, you could so easily do this or do that. You're probably right. You're probably right. I'm just too deaf to your suggestions, and I'm sorry. I feel sorry about that. I feel sorry that there are beautiful people out there that want to help me, that want to see me, cancel my pity party. And I want to tell those people honestly that I don't want to get better. It's not to say that I won't at some point in the future, but I know now that I don't want to get better. I'm going to keep on drinking my high fructose corn syrup drinks. And tonight I'll think, it's really best that I heat up some of the broccoli that's in my freezer. That's really what I should do. And then I won't. I'll go to the convenience store across the street, and I will, buy some Chef Boyardee and some frozen pizza and eat that. So, again, if you want to get something out of, if you want to guide me, there's nothing that says that you won't somehow, make a good impression on me. You can leave a comment. You can contact me. You can email me and say, Theo, this is what I want to help you. Or you might say something that might enliven me, but I'll tell you the truth, and I'll tell you, I don't believe that will happen. I've chosen such a hellish condition. I've chosen inaction. Inaction doesn't have, inaction is action in some ways. And there's even this Buddhist principle that inaction or non-action can be a good thing. And I've found how non-action can lead me to better things. But, I'm dealing with the fact that I've lost my job. I'm dealing with the fact that although I found the truth that I can heal myself by experiencing my emotions fully, I choose not to. Although I found the exact methodology that would allow me to perfect not only my heart, my soul, but also my physical body. But I don't do it. That gives me endless It makes me feel endless shame. So far as I see it, it seems endless. It's not endless, but it feels endless. And instead of picking myself out of this and really having a good cry, or really having a a good beat up session against my mattress or some other soft object, I don't recommend you hit a tree. You might think that you're strong enough, but you're going to break your wrist. um, you know, and I've quit my job. I've quit my job, as I've said, and I've quit my dream. Um, I don't have. I can't see a way to believe that I can actually um, achieve the dream of making a movie. I can't see how that would work. I can't imagine it anymore. I've deliberately chosen the path of giving up, of giving up. I've given up. I've chosen to give up. And all of that combined, this is where I justify, my deplorable behavior. I tell you that I can't keep working the job that I'm working. It's too hard. I'm in too much pain. I can't do it. And I tell you that, I can't do my dream. And I tell you that, I have severe pains that I can't feel through and heal. And now I'm now justifying my own flawed condition. So that is the crux of, if you believe in what I'm saying, if you agree with what I'm saying, then there's already something in you that shows that you have a proclivity towards, this, pitying yourself. There's something in you, if you're attracted to what I'm saying and you want to accept what I'm saying and believe what I'm saying as is true, then you are in almost as bad a state that I am in. I just want to present to you what I believe. I don't really want you to believe what I believe. I want you to know that I am sowing despair. And what should I reap but despair? And if you believe the same things that I believe, you are also sowing despair. I don't know the degree to which I am actually encouraging others to, fall into the same ditch that I've dug for myself. That's what really gives me pause before doing something like this. I really want to tell you, and this might be just me hedging, but I really want to tell you that these are my beliefs, these are my opinions, and I lose because I've chosen loss. I lose because I've chosen that I don't want abundance. I don't want good things for myself. I don't want joy. I don't want peace, the peace that surpasseth understanding. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to go to hell. I think that for whatever reason, I've been lucky enough to grow up believing that there is a God and believing that God can show me how much she loves me. And I believe that I have felt some of God's love in my life. And I think it really is. I'm being honest when I say it's really a beautiful thing. I doubt sometimes whether it actually has made a point to say that some people who believe they've received God's love haven't. So I want to not be so arrogant to think that it actually happened. But that can also be sinful to say that what happened actually doesn't happen because I'm choosing ignorance. But I think I'm lucky and blessed to have had certain events in my life and to have chosen to seek God's love and to see the benefits of a life of asking questions and seeking the truth and seeking for love from my parent. And yet, with all of that, with all the wisdom I may have gained, I still choose despair. I still choose really, really destructive addictions. So where I am right now, I have 3 months left on my lease, May, June, July, and I can't pay for that. There's a small chance that I can get my job back if I go to a doctor. And if he diagnoses me that I don't have sciatica, that I can go back to work, then I might be able to get my job back, and I might be able to pay for, my rent. And I might be able to survive. I basically made the decision to not seek work at this point. So it's either I get my job back. And my sciatica has gone down. Even as I sit here, there was a period of time where every day, after about 2 hours sitting down, I would experience severe sciatica, which, if you don't know what sciatica is, it is basically the triggering of your sciatic nerve. All your nerves, they have feeling. And if your nerve is compressed, if your sciatic nerve is compressed, or any nerve, as I understand, then you experience some form of pain. So I experience a lot of pain because somewhere my sciatic nerve is being compressed. And it's so painful that it makes me walk funny, so that I avoid further compression. So, because I don't want to move in such a way to where I keep on experiencing pain. So it's hard to walk, it's hard to sit. You have to lie down for the most part if you want to, not feel it. So anyway, that's what sciatica is. It's pain with your sciatic nerve. And if the doctor, after having some rest away from work, if the doctor diagnoses and says I don't have sciatic nerve, then there's a chance I can get my job back, and I can work for 3 months at least and pay back, pay my lease, and maybe continue to work, for another year, and maybe pay back all my debts. I've got about $6,000 left of debts to pay my college. But the real issue for me is that I don't know if it's a real issue. It's definitely a big issue, and I tie my worth to not being employed. But a really big issue for me is that everything's come to a head with the loss of my job. I now believe that I can't achieve my dream of making a great Hollywood film, or Hollywood-styled film that would inspire people. I don't believe that I can do that anymore. I've lost pretty much all faith in myself. And I know that you will say, Theo, there's always something else that you can do. Just find out maybe that isn't what you were put on this earth for. And you'd probably be right. But I've tied my worth to that too. I'm rejecting that too. Does this sound like, I don't know, it sounds like I'm really going on and on and on. I have nothing to say except to confirm my own. I'm just confirming how this is not going to work. And that's basically the pity party. I'm throwing this pity party. So if you've actually watched an hour and a half of this, I don't know if I should say I commend you because I'm not sure it's commendable. And I really just want to, I don't know, maybe I just want to, for my own, I think this whole thing might be extremely selfish, where I just want to justify to you publicly that, you may believe that I can do it, but I'm telling you, I would like to convince you that you're wrong. I actually can't do it. I can't survive this horrible world. I can't make it work. That's what I want to prove to you. So I think that's that invalidates this entire video that I'm making here. I think the only redeemable quality of this video is the fact that you can get a window into the psychology of my own self-destruction, the psychology behind my own self-destruction. And I'm aware that I probably haven't hit the bottom. I'm not aware of all the fears and all the pain, all the grief that I have that has led me, the fact that I've held on to those things that has led me down this path. But I'm pretty sure it's there. Like, it's kind of a weird state to be in, where you believe that you have a choice to get better, to be perfect. You can at any point choose good over evil, choose love over hate, defilement, fear, resentment. But you choose not to. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition to be in. Like, I blame God for much of my situation, and I know somewhere inside of me that I'm wrong, that it's really screwed up, that I would blame the perfect creator. The only thing good about it is it shows that we really do have free will. Animals are not going to say, you know what, fucking God, am I right? He's such an asshole. As I understand, the only reason why animals commit violent acts, the reason why an animal might, bite. I saw this video of an animal, a dog, biting onto a child's leg and dragging it, until a cat came along and put out its hair and made itself big and attacked the dog. So the cat was actually saving the dog, or the child. But I mean, the only reason why an animal would do that is because it experiences, it perfectly absorbs the wicked nature of the human beings around it. But you don't see animals blaming God. It proves the point that we do truly have free will. And I want to talk about at least two other things in this video. I want to talk about hypocrisy. I think that I may be a hypocritical person, an extraordinarily hypocritical person. So let me talk about what I think about hypocrisy and how I might be a hypocrite. I was in a group chat with two friends of mine, Josh and Chris, and I was saying that we were talking about looking at women. We were talking about women in general, and how to find love in our life and how to operate in this world. Anyway, I basically said, I think it's wrong to ogle women. I think it's wrong to have wandering eyes, basically, to look a woman up and down and lustfully admire them. And my friend Chris said, do you do that? And I said, yes, I actually do that. And he said, well, you're a hypocrite. And I we fleshed out what he was saying, and he basically was saying, you can't tell people that you think it's wrong and then actually engage in that behavior. And I was flummoxed by what he said. I was, floored. I felt that I had to be quiet because it felt right what he was saying. And what I find in my life And a very beautiful, loving friend of mine named Zachary M. Bradley. He is a public figure. He has a YouTube account. You can look up his YouTube account. He follows the divine truth. He's a beautiful man, as far as I'm concerned, for the most part. I mean, he's not perfect, but he has very, very clear videos. He found the truth, the divine truth, later than I had. And I think I'm a little jealous of how far along he is. And I actually look up to him, as I believe one ought to. It's not wrong of me to, there's this new age idea that, oh, we're all equal, we're all the same. Well, we're not equal in love. That's a very important truth to accept, is that, because we all have the choice as far as how loving we are, how much love we have in our soul. One person can be further along than another person. The very fact that you can have a perfect person and you can have an imperfect person means that, one person is further along than the other. So I believe that he's actually further along. And I looked to him for advice and counsel, and he lovingly obliged. The first time we talked on the phone, we talked for like 2 hours, and then he had to go get some groceries at Costco. He took a break, and then we talked for another 2 hours, I think. I mean, I was extraordinarily grateful towards him. I was going through a slump, and my conversation with him took me out of it. I started having some amazing law of attraction events where I was attracting beautiful things into my life. There was this black woman. I'll give you an example. There was this black woman. Like I have a lot of confusion around my relationships with black people. As a white person myself, I have this white guilt syndrome, where I think that I am constantly contributing to people because of white privilege. And I look into these things, and a lot of this I deny, and I look into ways to explain how white privilege is not a thing, how I'm not actually doing as much as I think. And I think some of what I find is true. And I think the degree to which I negatively affect black people in my country is debatable. Like, I think there's a lot of anger and resentment that black people have towards white people, and a lot of it is misplaced. I do believe that, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's not all justified in its own way. I mean, you can't say that anger is justified, but you can understand why someone would have a lot of anger. If a child is physically, emotionally abused its whole childhood, you can understand why that child, let's say the parent is abusing it. You can understand the level of anger that child might have. It went through hell. It went through hell. I've heard of this thing where there's no better example of emotional abuse that I can think of than the story of this one young girl who became a woman who had a special form of motherly abuse, where the mother was propping up that the child had like cancer and all these other physical ailments, which it didn't have. Like, the child was put in a wheelchair, but it could walk. And what the mother was doing was like extorting money from the state and hospitals and government to fund her lifestyle through the imagined illness that the child had. And it didn't have the illness. And the mother fiercely controlled what the child could do. And her way of rebelling was to find boyfriends online. And she finally found a boyfriend who she was able to manipulate into actually murdering her mother. That is just a crazy thing, but that, happened. And while I don't justify anger, I believe that you can understand anger if if you've been extremely abusive to someone and they one day, blast you for all of the evil that you committed towards them, and they get enraged with you, maybe they kill you, maybe you go to the spirit world. I mean, you have to at least understand that, because they've been under such severe abuse for so long. So I don't want to delegitimize anger that makes sense in Black people, but I myself have found, the anger to be very harmful to myself, and unjustified, and misplaced, and it affects me a lot. And really, I should just take it and release it. But what I do is I get angry in return. And that's why I think I might be somewhat racist, is that, I find ways to explain how angry, Black people are towards me. I'm getting a little bit OCD over the fact that one of my shoulders is higher than the other. I don't know why that is. I don't like unevenness. Looking at my eyes recently, and one of my eyes is higher than the other on the level. My left eye is higher than my right eye. I wouldn't notice it unless, it's something that I see in my aunt and on my father's side, and my father himself. Where if you were to see them, you would see this extreme, lack of symmetry in their eyes. And I hate that I'm getting it too. Anyway, I don't like unevenness. I think that's another thing I could talk about, is how beauty is really, it's a good way of telling what someone's condition is. A lot of people want to say, oh, don't be so nasty. It's rude. It's awful of you to notice how ugly someone is. I mean, if someone is actually ugly, I think the best thing that they can do is acknowledge it. It's painful to realize how ugly you are. I'm at least aware of how ugly I am. I mean, I have some, like, this is another thing. I don't have an issue too much with beautiful men. I don't have an issue with men being beautiful. I don't see anything wrong. It's something unique to American English that you can't call a man beautiful. When you talk about beauty isn't only inherent to women. You're supposed to be able to say, or you can say that a woman is beautiful or pretty, but you can't say a man is beautiful or pretty. Now, pretty, I understand. Pretty, is more of a feminine thing. But unless the man is gay and he's very feminine, I think some feminine men may actually be pretty. And I know a lot of people will think, "Oh, you're fucking gay, Theo." That's fine. Think whatever you want. I'm happy I'm able to laugh at that. But if you look at the word beauty or beautiful, it means full of beauty. So, everything that God made is beautiful, even the ugly things. You have to, the human being that is ugly, the human being itself is beautiful, but the ugly traits that beautiful thing has, that beautiful creation has, are the result of the sinful choices that person has made. So what I'm saying is that there's a relationship between a lack of beauty and sin. So the more beautiful you are, the more likely you are very loving. You are a very loving person. So the angels in the spirit world, who are actually people, there are no angels that are different to human beings. The angels in the spirit world are people who have achieved at one-ment with God. And sometimes there are people on earth who have seen an angel and it changes their life because It's an inspiring thing. It's an inspiring and encouraging thing to behold, to actually behold an angel. Why? Because they're beautiful. Man, whether it's a male angel or a female angel, they're beautiful. So there really is a relationship between beauty and love. I will say that in some cases, in the cases of Hollywood celebrities and some politicians or celebrities in general, or some intellectuals or public figures who are beautiful, in some instances, the beauty um, is energy that has been given to that person through spirits that have an addictive, codependent relationship with that human being. So in many cases, beauty can be, or in some cases, beauty can be something related to how much energy, uh, unloving spirits are pumping into that person. And many, as I understand, many celebrities who pass to the spirit world who no longer can, you know, um, follow the whims and dictates of of this evil horde of spirits, they now find the truth of their actual essence is they may look at themselves in the mirror and see a very ugly human being staring back at them because they haven't done enough. They haven't they haven't developed enough love in their soul. But the fact is, it's just like someone that's born with a birth defect. If they can, and I realize I have to go back to hypocrisy. I think I'm going to go beyond 2 hours in this video. If I'm cut off before that time, I'll write some things in the description, and I'll try to finish some points that I was trying to make. But it's just like the person who is born with a birth defect, like spinal bifida, that keeps them from being able to walk, and who keeps them disabled. Those people can feel their emotional injuries and return to ability, go from disability to ability. And in much the same way, ugly people, and yes, I am saying there are ugly people, of which I have, I'm ugly in many ways myself. My baldness isn't particularly beautiful. The unevenness of my eyes, uh, it goes far to the right. My obesity and the excess fat on my body isn't very, is ugly. My hands are weak and feminine and squishy. I have all these liver spots, even as a 33-year-old man. I have this liver spots that you might find in a 55-year-old man. I have this one black spot that my mother thought was a pimple, and she tried to remove it, but it's just, I'm getting all these. Can't really see them with my shadow, but all these spots all over my body and my face. I have these dark spots. I have very ugly elements to myself, but just like the disabled person, I can heal myself from my ugliness if I feel my emotions. I realize a lot of people think that that's crazy, but I really believe that's the truth. I just choose not to do that. So I want to return to the subject of hypocrisy. So this friend of mine, who I do recommend you look into if you are interested in the divine truth, his name is Zachary M. Bradley. I talked to him. You can find his YouTube channel online, Zachary M. Bradley. I talked to him, and he gave me, I wanted to talk about something with him, and in the middle of the conversation, I was going on and on about something, and in the middle of the conversation, he asked me, why do you want to correct people? And I said, what do you mean, correct people? Isn't it good to correct people? And he said, well, you know, the word correct, that means you want to change someone. And I was defiant, and I said, I'm not. It's not that I want to correct people. It's that I want to present the truth. I'm just using that word correct because that implies presenting the truth to me. And he said, if someone doesn't want to hear what you have to say, what I would do, he was saying, is I wouldn't continue a discourse with them. I wouldn't present anything to them if they're not interested. And I thought about that, and I thought that, if you're in a conversation with someone, then they actually are interested in what you have to say. And if they're not, you might close the conversation, and I have. But to me, I was following the desire of the person I was talking to. But he stuck to his guns, and he never relented. And he basically concluded with me that I am someone who likes to correct people, whether they want correction or not. And that was impossible for me to agree with. And up until this point, I am still not, my heart is not at rest with that issue. I have not been able to see the truth, if it is in fact the truth, that I am someone that likes to do this. I mean, you might be asking yourself, why is this important to Theo? What does this mean? Is it really so bad to correct people? If you're someone that wonders if it is wrong to correct people or not, think about the fact that, like, what I see myself doing is I get on comment threads of videos on YouTube. Like, all I do is watch YouTube. And I will pick something that someone says, and I will say, you're wrong about this. And, whether they have made an appeal specifically as to, tell me what you think, write something in the comments or not, I will still do that. I will, even if it's not obvious that they are interested. A lot of times it's pretty clear that they wouldn't be interested. And sometimes when when they're not interested in what someone else might have to say, if it's a differing opinion or not, I'll still write something. And I think in that moment that I'm doing it for anyone else that may come along that wants to hear another, perspective. But the fact is that I do this a lot. I do it so much that I've had to ask myself, is this really helping? Because rarely do I get a positive response. I mean, the thing to me is that if I lived a life where I was not presenting the truth of what I believe, then I just can't imagine myself living that kind of life. I imagine myself talking to someone, and someone says, God is such a faggot. I don't even believe in God. The whole idea that God is alive or God exists, it's ridiculous. Evolutionary biologists have proven that we come from, primordial ooze, and we developed over time. No one's quite sure exactly where that primordial ooze came about, but we had the first single cell organisms, and those evolved into higher organisms, and more complex organisms, and finally, man came on the scene. Human beings arrived, and we're no different to the animals. We might have a bigger brain, higher intelligence, but we're no different to the animals. Anyway, so you want to go get a meal at Applebee's? You want to run over to Applebee's? They have this new burger it's delicious. Um, so they're talking to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, let's run over. Yeah, let's go. And then I talk to them, and they're like, yeah, anyway, this God thing, yeah, and they keep on going about how chances are that God doesn't exist. And, I would listen to that for a while. But the point that I'm making here is that at some point, I would not be able to live with myself if I said nothing in return to dissuade them from uh, their own position that there is no God. If I did nothing to present them with an alternative view that there may very well be a God, and that God is our parent who loves us, which is something that I have found in my quieter moments to be true, then I wouldn't be able to live with myself. And I think that's a good thing. I think what my friend Zachary would want to suggest is that, why do you want to spend time with people who are committed to their ignorance? And yeah, that's a compelling point that he would make. And I think that I would like to weed myself away from those people, but I can't eliminate their presence from my life. And when things are presented to me, especially if there was like a public scene, that person may not be interested, but someone else might want to hear it. And for the sake of the other people who are listening, I might say something. But of course, going back to the example of Jesus and the Pharisees, I think who they were. Jesus admonished them instead of answering their questions, which were, intended to, trip him up. He would just present the truth and say, you don't want to hear what I have to say because you have a wicked heart. And that really is, I hold that is still, the best thing to do. Don't comply with someone who is not looking for truth. But I feel that in conversations, and in the particular conversation that I was having with Zachary, I was actually talking about a conversation that I was having with someone else, where I was correcting that person, and I felt that I couldn't stand by and continue a conversation without saying something. And it was definitely an option for me to discontinue that conversation, to say, it doesn't seem that you are interested in hearing what I have to say or hearing what I know to be the truth. And so I'd rather not talk to you anymore. This was actually someone in my paratransit vehicle who I had to drive home, and it was like an hour journey, an hour and a half or so. And I had that option to say that, but I was so afraid that I would get some kind of level of attack that I didn't say that. And so I've had it so many times where I'm, in a conversation with someone and I don't agree with what they have to say, and I'll just say nothing, and I'll just like fester. The pain will fester. Like, actually, I do become angry. I become angry with myself for the most part. I become so upset with myself that I can't say anything, that I'm so afraid. Anyway, how does this have to do anything with hypocrisy? Well, it has to do with hypocrisy because if I go around presenting what I believe to be true, but yet I don't live that way, I don't practice what I preach, then I'm not being a hypocrite. So I basically found, my friend telling me that I'm a hypocrite, And this other friend, Zachary, my friend Chris telling me that I'm a hypocrite, and my friend Zachary saying to me, you love to correct people, which suggests that I'm often being hypocritical because I often say something without living it. And, I had to look at that truth or see how truthful my friends were being with me. And I was very resistant to what they had to say to me. And I don't know how to imagine my life going forward, not correcting people and saying nothing while people are talking to me. I mean, what I want to do at this point is I want to avoid everyone. I think making a YouTube video and presenting my beliefs, my ideas, is one good way where you can express something in such a way that, where you're not infringing on someone's lack of desire. Because if someone does not want to engage with you, you have no right, basically. It's to engage with them. It's not loving to engage with someone that doesn't want to engage with you. And this is where many religious people get it wrong. Many people who proselytize, who quote unquote witness, they get it wrong when they are pushing something on someone, when they're pushing a belief on someone who is not interested. Now, when they're interested, have at it. But, and I would say with a caveat that, don't push it on them. Just present what you believe and present a logical argument. And, even if you're wrong, it might help them. It might jigger something in them that might assist them in their journey to discover the truth. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when you push something on someone, when you say, if you don't do this, you're going straight to hell, that is not an unloving thing. And if you watch, Jesus and his seminars, and his lectures, where he is teaching people the truth, you see that he never does this. People have the choice to come over and watch him speak. And at the moment that they discover in themselves that they don't want to hear what he has to say, they have the free will choice to exit the area. They can live however they choose to live. They don't have to hear the truth. It's totally cool. But many times they don't. Many times they remain and they grow their anger and get in a rage with Jesus. And Jesus feels it, even if, I'm not saying he's special because he's Jesus, but anyone can feel it when someone's getting in a rage with you. Someone gives you the stink eye, the evil eye, the stare of 1,000 daggers. Or sometimes, they could be looking down and they could just be like seething with rage. And that's enough to put you off. That's harm. That's really harm. And that's why I admit that I'm a pedophile. Because even though I've never molested a child, I've never raped or abused a child sexually, I know that it's wrong that I think of them and fantasize about them on occasion. It's absolutely wrong because we live foremost in a soul universe. Our soul exists in the reality of, excuse me. We are constantly engaging in energy transactions. We are constantly creating and exchanging and transferring energy in this soul universe. And these energy transfers govern all of the processes that exist in the universe. That's how the law of attraction works. So if a civilization has, self-destructive, angry beliefs and feelings, then you might find a religious practice like sacrificing, one of its citizens, one of the citizens of the civilization, once a month or on some special created holiday, some religious holiday. You might find this practice of, killing a citizen And this is necessary because of some fabricated idea. And that's only because of the feeling that people have. And you may find, tornadoes, ripped through your house, but not your neighbor's house. Maybe there's like 20 houses in a neighborhood, and only your house, gets hit by a lightning bolt and burns to the ground. And although the fire could have somehow, went to other people's houses, it was stopped. And why did the injustice happen only to yourself? There's a reason for that. You may not understand that reason, but there's a reason for that. We exist in a universe of energy transference and I'm feeling a little hesitant to talk about this because I don't understand exactly how it works. And I can't sit here and tell you exactly how that works, but it makes complete sense to me because everything that God has done is reasonable. There's reason behind everything. There's a purpose behind everything. And everything that occurs in the universe, there is a functional process that explains that occurrence, that event. And the bad things that occur, this is the important thing for every truth seeker to understand. The bad things that happen, not only can it be a doorway, a threshold to understanding, to truth, to wisdom. You can have something horrible happen to you. You can have your child, quote unquote, taken away from you and die. And you can learn from that. You can change your life because of that. What is thought of as an unfortunate event can actually teach you and help you to grow. That's important, but it's also important to see. It's really important that people who are seeking the truth understand that we, as human beings, have created the misfortune in our lives. Every unfortunate circumstance, every single misfortune that we experience is something that we've created. And so I know that this one tooth right here, which is laden with cavities, I can no longer chew on this side of my jaw because I have so many cavities in that one tooth. If I bite down on it, like I just sneezed and realized that I could have bitten down on it. I created that event. I created the cavity in the tooth. I didn't brush enough. I've had too much sugary drinks, soda pop and candy, and I haven't properly nourished myself. My saliva is, malnourishing. It degrades the condition of my teeth. It decomposes the enamel, and I created that. And the fact that I can't, eat from one side of my mouth keeps me depressed. Instead of being angry or feeling my anger and getting down to my fear and my grief, I remain in a state of anger and I become stoic to it and I become depressed. And that depression keeps me from being all that I can be. So, every illness that you create, every, negative event in your life that affects you is something that you and all of us has created in some way. The only people that don't contribute to the general lack of welfare and sickness and people that don't contribute to misfortune in our universe are the people that are at one with God. As far as I understand, those are the only people who are not actively contributing to mankind's degraded state. So that would be a great thing for you to do. I mean, that's one big reason for me why I want to be at one with God, because I will know that in that state, I no longer harming people. Two hours and 10 minutes in, I wonder if I have meaningfully represented everything I wanted to say. I feel another sneeze coming on. Anyway, I don't know if I've covered what I wanted to say about hypocrisy, but I think I've done the best that I can do with that. I really wonder, like, I think the only times that I can honestly attempt to correct someone that wants to hear my perspective, of which I've noticed that there are very few people who seem to be interested in my perspective. Very few people watch my videos. Very few people in my day-to-day life ask me for advice. I can count on my hand with 5 fingers the number of times someone has directly asked me for advice in perhaps the last 2 years, maybe longer. People are very infrequently interested in my perspective. So this gives me pause. This makes me ask, is something about the way I look or the way that I lead my life stopping people from being interested in what I have to say? Probably. It makes sense. I mean, people gravitate and are attracted to people who are not only loving but are examples. They conduct themselves admirably due to the level of love in their heart, and people are inevitably attracted to them. People are attracted to Jesus and Mary. The few that are, I mean, there's a decent number. But the few that are, the people that respect Jesus and Mary see what they are accomplishing and see, the integrity with which they live their lives. I personally am struck by their honesty. They won't wax on forever about their problems, but they will admit their flaws. I see this thing about myself, and I have yet to overcome this. For Jesus, he's very honest about how he's not dealing with issues of worth, and it affects his lower abdominal area. He had a surgery when he was like 2 years old or something, or when he was like a toddler, and they snipped one of his intestines or something, or they had to do some kind of surgery with it. So, he's had these things that affect him, and some of his, this is interesting to me because I know my sister has had digestion issues for a long time. So I haven't had so much of that, which is weird because I do think I have a lot of issues with worth. But anyway, I'm very I respect the hell out of Jesus and Mary because, they're so freaking honest. They're honest to a degree I have not seen. I wish I could be as honest as them. But they're also righteous. They're also willing to say to people, you're not interested in the truth right now. I don't want to talk to you right now. They're willing to tell people, I don't want to talk to you right now. How many times have you done that? Without hating the person. It's not angry or sinful or, unloving to say to someone, I don't really want to talk to you. Someone comes up to you, they start talking to you, maybe they're complaining or they're talking about some issue in their life, or maybe they're being abusive or saying, I want you to know this, this thing, and this thing, and how can you do this? Da, 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 da. It's not wrong to say, I don't want to talk to you right now. That's the truth. Actually, you're hurting yourself. You're engaging in deceptive self-harm if you stay with them. So that's why it's so honest, and it's such a thing of integrity to say to someone, I don't want to talk to you right now. I've done that. I've done that before, but rarely. Usually I'll just I've hung up on people. And I remember just last week I was talking to my mom and I said, can I hang up now? Because I felt like she was really trying to hold on the conversation. But they're just so extremely honest and loving. They love themselves, not fully and completely, but much more than many of us do. And they love their fellow brothers and sisters. I can't say that for myself. I'm quite sure, even though I do profess to have some level of love for my fellow brothers and sisters, I can't say that I have a lot of love for people. If I did, I would be doing things that help people. I would be following my passions. I may give up on my dream to become a movie maker. Maybe that's not what I am. I could pray, and I could strike a course. You know, I could act and say, well, maybe I don't want to make movies, but I do kind of want to do this. So let me work in that direction. And I will find the truth if I have that level of faith, you know, that, come what may, come whatever trials and tribulations I come across, that I will get to my passion. I will find my passion and have enough, I guess, force of will, really force of desire behind, that to actually engage. And, if I want to be a farmer, I would farm. I would at least try to get some training to be a farmer. If I want to be a counselor, I would get some training to be a counselor. If I wanted to be a spiritual advisor, I'd start spiritually advising, or whatever it is, and it doesn't have to look great in the beginning. I think it will feel a little good if you start engaging your passions. It does. It's exciting, and but when you're looking at it, a lot of times you're peering out of the cocoon. When you pursue your passions, you're peering out of your cocoon. You're going through a transmogrifying process, if I can use that word. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're transforming into someone that is who is wedded to their passions, and that's our destiny if we choose to accept it. Our mission if we choose to accept it. I'm just struck by the silence I hear, but I think this is important to talk about. There's silence in the library. I wonder if anyone's listening to me. I wonder how loud I am. But yeah. But as you awaken from your cocoon, as you transform, you have to shed your false ideas and your old self, the self that kept you inhibited, kept you limited, and you are becoming someone. You are transgressing. You are walking past the boundaries that you've set in place for yourself. Every boundary that we have is a result of our own ignorance, our own lack of desire to seek the truth, our own lack of desire, or listening to our fear that, if you have a fear that you can't find the truth, if you have a fear that you can't make it, that you can't embody the destiny that God has for you, then I don't know what I'm saying. I'm losing track. Sorry. But I hope that's meaningful. Like basically what I'm saying is that as you change into someone who is, following your passions, you have to you have to come face to face with every decision you've ever made to hold yourself back. It's really profound to me because it shows that, our limitations are psychological. You can go deeper and say it's really ultimately emotional. We have these emotional boundaries that we fear to tread past because of the fear. And when you come face to face with, the way you have limited yourself, it's a sobering moment. And that's what I'm coming across in my own personal life. I'm 33 years old. The world is my oyster. What's that world? What's that song? sometimes I love to sing songs out of the blue, and I like to sing at least the first line of that one song by Frank Sinatra. I've got the world on a string. I'm sitting on a rainbow. Got that string around my finger. What a world, what a life I live and love. There is a song that I sing. I can make the rainbow anytime I move my finger. What a world, what a life I live and love. I could embrace that. I've got the world on a string. I'm sitting on a rainbow. I could choose that life for myself, and I tear up a little bit, with regret and the thought that I am actively inhibiting myself by walking in the opposite direction, by choosing the path to yet more despair. It's my journey, man. Don't if you feel some sense or semblance of sorrow for what I'm telling you, I want you to know that it's, you've done nothing. If you believe, and I'm not saying that you do, but if you believe that you're hurting me in some way, I really do believe that any sorrow you may feel is just the what you see for yourself. The ways that you inhibit yourself. That's the sorrow you feel in the moment that I talk about these things. So, yeah, I don't know. 2 hours and 22 minutes. I think I have some time for the end of this video. I ask myself, should I even continue talking? Who wants to listen to this? Very few people listen to my videos the whole way through. I know that I'm not particularly inspiring or encouraging to anyone, and if you think that I am, I personally would doubt your frame of mind. But I might be. I mean, the jury's out. Maybe some of what I have to say, like, I think I at least know some truths, and I think, I don't know. This is part and parcel of what I'm saying. Like, do I say anything if I don't live it? If I haven't practiced what I'm preaching, do I even have the right to mention what I believe in? Maybe not. But in my sin, let's say I'm wrong. Let's say it's better that I take the time now to just practice what I believe, instead of making a video sharing with you everything that I believe. Maybe it's a better use of my time on this earth, or in my life in general, to actually practice these things. But if that's true, let's see. If it's true that it's a better use of my time to actually practice what I believe until it becomes knowledge, because knowledge you can really take to the bank. Belief is a state of growth. If you believe something, it behooves you to discover the truth. So if you believe, that the earth is flat, then it behooves you to research and conduct experiments to inform yourself of the truth of what you believe. It's not enough to just say, I believe something. You can exist for years and years, maybe even millennia, operating from the point of belief. You really, it behooves you to discover the truth about what you believe. So, believing is just one point of the journey. It's the starting point. You now have to conduct experiments, and not necessarily for anyone but yourself. You can't, if you want to know if God exists, ask, are you there, God? Do you love me? Do you care about me? Did you create me? What do I mean to you? If you're there and I can feel you, please help me to feel you now. I have doubts. I'm not sure about you. There's so much suffering in the world. I've suffered as far as I can tell. I so many people will say that you're not real. Who am I to say that you are real? Who am I to say that what I believe is true? Can you help me? Can you help me to find out, what the truth is? I want to know. And if you really believe that, if you have faith that at some point knowledge will be furnished to you, chances are it will. So that's my recommendation, for my fallen, flawed state. But, I think it's a pretty simple observation to make, that belief is just the first step. The next step is experimentation. That this comes up a lot. The scientific method. The scientific method for me is simple. It's 3 steps. Number 1, you believe something, anything. Number 2, you experiment. And I don't know what would be the next step, or either number 2 or number 3. You make a conclusion and you accept knowledge. So in the experimentation process, knowledge will come to you, in some form. And you may not necessarily be able to make a full conclusion as to whether what you believe is correct or not. But, whether or not, the actual event or events that transpire as a result of your experiment, those, that is knowledge. You may have to reconduct your experiment. You may, with whatever, what I'm saying is that you can conduct an experiment and it may not lead you to the truth just then, but you will have the knowledge that comes from analyzing the results of your experiment. I hope that makes sense. And what I'm saying is that is knowledge. That is something you can go on. Even if you conduct an experiment and you find that there's, no result, you were not able to come to any kind of result, which I think is possible. You conduct something and nothing happens. You conduct an experiment, nothing happens. At that point, you have the knowledge that, you did something, you acted, and nothing happened. And now you have the knowledge. The result of your action is nothing happened. You can reconduct the experiment, and introduce another variable. Nothing happens. Reconduct it again, introduce another variable. Something happens. Now, the first 2 times nothing happened. The third time something happened. So, and I'm saying every single one of those times, all 3 of those times, you had knowledge. So to me, it's simple. It's 3 steps. Have a belief, conduct an experiment, retrieve knowledge. But the world, or the scientific method, as it is now. But this is what it is. I'll just say what it is. So the scientific method, observation, question. It's like a hypothesis. Oh, no, not yet. Okay. The first step is observation, question. So topic for research and experimentation, or question that needs to be answered. Step 2, research, find out about the topic. Step 3, hypothesis, predict the outcome to the problem. Oh, okay, that's what a hypothesis is. Yeah, that's right. Step 4, experiment, develop a procedure to test the hypothesis. Step 5, collect data, record the results of the experiment. Step 6, analysis, examine the data. Step 7, conclusion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Conclusion. Compare the hypothesis to the experiment's results. Okay, that's completely valid. Let me just call my own experiment, my own process, theo-scientific method. So theo-scientific method is step 1, have a belief. Step 2, conduct an experiment that would help to prove or disprove that belief. Step 3, retrieve knowledge, or analyze the information that your experiment produced. Okay, so yeah, that's all I'm saying. So now, I hope I've rounded out that point. Now I want to talk about Vox Day. So Vox Day, I've been watching a lot of Owen Benjamin, and Owen Benjamin gets much of his current worldview from one Vox Day. And so, because I respect much of what Owen says, I found myself interested in what Vox Day had to say. I started watching many of Vox Day's videos, and I was very affected by something that Vox Day said. He basically has he developed this concept of what he calls, or what is called, the male sociosexual hierarchy. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The male sociosexual hierarchy. So it's basically how men interact in, the public sphere, in social situations. So it's the order. It's the order of dominance, I guess. Who takes or inherits leadership roles, who becomes the lieutenant, and who becomes the worker bee, essentially. I don't want to try to minimize that position. And who becomes the complaining worker that begrudgingly carries out his work, but is subversive to the hierarchy while wishing that he's at the top. And then there's a position even for someone that is kind of antisocial, who attempts to avoid everyone. And in this hierarchy, Vox Day has also created the position of someone who is outside of the hierarchy, who is nonetheless very productive. So basically there are 6, I don't want to say levels, let's say 6 characters in this social sexual hierarchy among males. And it is limited to males. So I will here present the different characters and analyze somewhat and make my own conclusions and give my own analysis. So if this is something that doesn't interest you, then feel free to go somewhere else. I find it very interesting personally. And I'll say here that I don't necessarily trust all of this, but you can listen as you want. I'm quite certain that I will, close out this video talking about this thing. And if it's not for you, that's cool, totally cool. But basically, so we have the male sociosexual hierarchy, and there are 6 different characters from top to bottom. So at the very top, you have what's called the alpha, what Vox Day calls the alpha. Now, the alpha is the leader of the pack, and the alpha dictates, what we will do today, and or what activities the organization will conduct, whether it's a corporation or something, or like or a basketball team or whatever. And there are certain characteristics that the alpha has. The alpha often has many women. The alpha often is a philanderer, I think is the right word. Some might call them womanizers, but everyone wants to be an alpha, kind of. I think people defy the alpha. Even the person that is in the position of gamma wants to be an alpha, apparently. But the alpha gets things done. The alpha often has kind of a big ego, and this ego kind of fuels him and allows him to get things done. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. The alpha is strong and determined and gets things done and gets results and is an effective leader. All right. So what is the next level in the hierarchy below the alpha? The next level is what Vox Day terms the beta. And a lot of people will just say that there's like 2. There's the alpha and the beta. And some people want to say that, you're either an alpha or you're a beta. And really, you should be an alpha. Everyone should be an alpha. Of course, that doesn't make sense because you can't have like a bunch of alphas. So this is why I think Vox has created all of these different positions, because he recognizes that there can only be a few alphas ultimately. And the rest are, they're different. And he says there's not just betas. There's other positions beyond the beta. But there are some people that have only this dichotomy of the alpha and the beta. So anyway, the beta is like the lieutenant. And the beta is effective at receiving dictates from the alpha, and also, expressing those dictates to those in lower positions. There are more betas than alphas, but there's more betas than alphas, but there's even more of the other ones. I'm sorry, I'm not expressing this very well. I don't know much about the betas, honestly. I might have to just move on. But the betas are just under the alphas. Then underneath the betas are deltas. And deltas, for lack of a better term right now, are the worker bee. The betas are also effective. They get things done. They don't bitch and bellyache and moan when an alpha or a beta tells them to do something. They do it. And if they can't do it, they honestly say, I can't do it. But they've really tried. They've actually tried. And so they are effective worker bees, essentially. I guess one more thing to say is that, this seems to be very important to the sociosexual hierarchy, which is like how much pootananny you get, or putang you get, how many women you get. Betas do not get as many women as alphas typically, but they do get the lion's share of women when you compare them. So as you go lower in the hierarchy, you get less attention from women. Apparently women like alphas the most, and then less so betas, less so deltas, even though they're very stable partners, and less so the gammas underneath. So, yeah, the deltas are effective worker bees. I think there's a better way to describe them. I don't want to diminish the deltas so much. They are a very, apparently, at least for those underneath them, they're apparently a respectable position to have. And those underneath the delta, they ought to be very grateful to at least achieve the position of delta, should they, put their mind to it and body to it. Anyway, so you have the alphas, you have the betas, you have the deltas. And then underneath that, you have the gammas. And the gammas are loathsome. The gammas are loathsome, snarky, sarcastic sheep who don't want to be sheep. They are resentful and they are gripey. They hold gripes, and they are fixated on their resentment. And they have this. Here's a special quality of the gammas, according to Vox Day. They have a secret king syndrome, where they believe that with no effort on their part, with no actual work ethic put towards anything, they will at some point inherit a position of respect, a position of leadership, a position where, they become key. But they don't get that, because no one can admire them because of how, slothful they are, how full of anger and, rage, and, they're pathetic. Basically, what you see in a gamma is you see someone that is spiteful and who is jealous of the alpha male and wants to reject the idea that there is even a hierarchy, and yet wants to be the top of that hierarchy. So they're lying to themselves, and they're severely deluded. And I can go on, but this really is a category that Vox, the category of people, the kind of people that Vox has to call out the most attention has to be given to these spineless creatures because they are subversive and they are destructive. And I understand to some degree what he's talking about, because when you have someone that is in your organization and they are, their intent is to destroy and subvert that organization, why would you want that person in your group? They will be nothing but a hamper. They can only hamper. And even if they conduct themselves with the, with the facade and appearance of contributing to the group, even in that moment, they are likely contributing to the downfall of that group. So, as an example, you can run an errand or, attempt to fulfill a project, and once it's done, chances are you won't actually do very much work to see that to have that come about. But once it's done, you may find this person talking for years on end about how great it was that he did this one thing, never doing anything else. And the effect will be to discourage and lower the morale of everyone else, that here's this guy, trying to be impressive all the time just because of one thing he did. It's not a very good example. I'm sorry. I think you should probably get what I'm saying. The gamma contributes very little. If there's any good thing to being a gamma, they are apparently very intelligent, and they know a lot about certain issues. Maybe it's because of how they fixate on things. They learn a lot about certain things. And if you wanted to know something about a certain subject, you would go to a gamma who is knowledgeable about that subject because they can cover all the bases. So apparently there are some good things that of a gamma, but gammas have even less putang, or even less women, if I can use that term, than the deltas, who have less than the betas, who have less ultimately than the alphas. Now, what's underneath that? It's up for debate whether this position is even in the hierarchy. Vox Day has made allusions to the fact that this isn't necessarily in the hierarchy, but underneath gammas we have if they are even in the hierarchy, you have the omegas. And omegas basically avoid everyone. They're antisocial. Interacting with someone for an extended period of time is terrifying to them, as I understand. And one way that you can find an omega is through your nose. They don't take care of themselves. They smell horrible. They have disgusting body odor. So it's almost impossible to be around them. And this is a defense tactic in the omega. I'm not saying that they're all like that, but basically the basic trait of the omega is that they disappear. They avoid. So the last category, the last character in this social sexual hierarchy that and omegas have either 0 or 1 or 2 sexual partners. The last character in this hierarchy, though, is definitely not in the hierarchy. This character is the sigma. And Vox had to make this character to explain people that had, a certain respect among, in the world. I don't know how to really say this, but like someone who, like, gammas and deltas are not terribly successful in their own right. And betas, are successful as long as they follow the leader. Deltas also follow the leader. Gammas, they follow the leader, but deceptively so. I don't know what I'm trying to say. They hate that they have to do something to survive. Like they have to do anything to survive in an organization so that they can have some kind of resources to survive in the world. But they do it nonetheless. They don't want to help or contribute, but they know that they have to. So they begrudgingly follow the leader, and so they're at the bottom. But sigmas, they don't follow the leader. They don't have the same character traits as the alpha, but they are successful people. Gammas are not very successful. Deltas aren't extremely successful, but they're more successful than gammas. They have more, sexual mates than the gammas. Sigmas, apparently, if I take Vox Day correctly, can get a lot of women in their life. But they reject the hierarchy. So the way that gammas apparently reject the hierarchy is that they believe in that they will one day become king of the hierarchy. They will inherit the top position because one day suddenly gloriously, everyone will realize how spectacular they are and how amazing they are, and everyone will just give them the keys to the kingdom. Freudian slip there. Everyone will give them the king of the kingdom. Um, but the Sigma does not want the keys to the kingdom. He just wants to live a great life and find one of the most beautiful women out there and marry her and live with her and, follow his own interests and enjoy his life. Sigmas are typically very intelligent. They don't care so much about the hierarchy and won't play, the games that you have to play as a member of the hierarchy. But they are nonetheless extremely successful and get a lot of women. So that's basically the social sexual hierarchy. You have 4 people that are definitely in the hierarchy, starting from the top: alpha, beta, delta, and gamma. And then you have one person that is questionably out of the hierarchy, the omega, the antisocial type. Then you have someone that is purposefully out of the hierarchy, but is nonetheless successful, who is the sigma. So, why do I bring this up? Why do I talk about it? What's the point of me talking about it? Well, basically, the reason I want to talk about it is that I have been called out as a gamma. I am a gamma. I am the bottom, at the bottom. I'm subversive. I'm resentful. I have a secret king syndrome, which, I don't necessarily, I'm willing to admit that I have some of that. I'm apparently, another trait that the gammas often have is they're extremely dishonest. So if someone says, you could help me if you did this, they'll say, oh, yes, I can do this. I can do that. But they don't do it. Or they will give you a bunch of reasons why you should still respect them, even though they're doing nothing, even though they reject the job that they've been given. So you could say, hey, please go and do this. And they'll say, oh, actually, I can't do that because of this reason. And they don't do it. So I can definitely see parallels of that in my own life. And another aspect of the gamma is that they're fat. It's not everyone who is fat is gamma, but many of them are. They're typically obese or just overweight. Another thing to say is that alphas and betas are often fit, at least a little bit. Alphas, betas, and sigmas, I should say. They're usually fit and healthy and often attractive. Handsome, you might say. Whereas gammas are typically not. So often you'll have a quote unquote skinny nerd, and they're a gamma. They're very intelligent when it comes to certain things, but they're kind of subversive and keep to their own little clique, or wish that they could have all the women one day. And I find it very hard to argue with what Fox is coming up with, as far as you do see these things in reality. You do see these traits in these different groups. And I being called out as a gamma, it's funny. Like I made a few comments on one of Fox Day's YouTube videos, one of his YouTube streams, where he's talking about this, and he picked up right away, apparently, that I'm a gamma. He would say that he has gamma radar like no one else. He can spot a gamma from miles away, and his nose can incidentally pick up an omega from maybe miles away because of their odor. But as far as gammas are concerned, his gamma radar is you know is I'm trying to be eloquent here. Is fixed to a fine tooth point. I don't know what I'm saying. Is in full form and function. The gamma radar with Vox as a sigma is fully operational. So apparently, so I'm going to read some of the comments that I made, and which expresses my own thoughts and how Vox reacted. So my first comment, Vox, you have adopted this belief system to validate competition in males. The desire to compete is sinful. Love would dictate that we all follow our passions and exercise our unique, God-given talents in harmony with each other. And if you are someone who, asks yourself questions about economy and, how everything works and are nonetheless religious, then, I think it is a good thing to know that, the truth is that we can all become perfected beings who are continually expressing our own passions and desires. And that would work in God's universe, the way that God designed us and everything to work. I don't think a lot of people know that or are aware of that. I think people are, believe in this, paradigm of competition. And I'm quite certain that Vox Day believes in competition. But I will say that this goes back to my whole, desire to comment on people's YouTube videos and with the interest of correcting someone, because I want to incite something, or I want to be right. And why would I want to be right? Why would I want to even talk to someone who's not interested in talking to me? Maybe I'm commenting because I want to help other people that are coming to this and questioning, but maybe they're not interested. Why not express myself? And this makes total sense to me. Instead of going to other people's videos and making comments that contradict some points that they're making, I could spend my time better doing my own thing, creating something that, even if only a few people are attracted, to what I'm doing, it would probably go a lot further. I'd go a lot further in the use of my time. So, while I think it's good that I said this, Vox, you have adopted this belief system to validate competition in males. I think it is questionable that I even have this desire to make these comments to someone who's probably not interested. All right, another comment that I made. You can't change your behavior. People do that all the time. So I say that in response to something that Vox Day said, where he said that people can't really change their behavior. But he does admit that people can, for the most part. In other words, he does suggest that, if you're a gamma, you can become a delta. He's never really suggested that you can become an alpha from a beta, or you can become a beta from a gamma, a delta. But he suggested that, this loathsome state that you are in as a gamma, you can change that if you work really hard and become at least a delta. He says he's found few people that can go from gamma to anything higher than a delta. And many people who try to be deltas at least are still gammas at heart. So anyway, but at one point I'm just responding to that one time and saying that, people can change. And I say that, you could say hypocritically, because how much have I changed? When I was, 25, I hated my life so much that I wanted to end it all. And I moved to Fargo from my home in the Northeast. and tried to end my life and was not successful. And then I went to a homeless shelter, and then I finally found work, and I lived a life of seclusion and as a bus driver, nonetheless making a lucrative income, but you know, for the most part, a life of seclusion. And I didn't build anything, and I just went to work and came home every day. And now I'm in Chicago, still believing that one day, you know, for the most part of most of the time that I was here, believing that one day I could achieve, my great lofty goal of being a filmmaker, you know, insert secret king syndrome here. And one day someone will give me the keys to the kingdom and see my obvious talent of conducting a movie making project. And now I've finally given up on that. But for the most part, I was doing that. And I even had that goal in Fargo too. But for the most part, living a life of seclusion in Chicago, going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home, not spending too much time with people, and hating my job and hating my life in the process. So not much has changed for me. And even now, even though I'm too afraid to end my life, I kind of revel in the idea that I could, wither on the side of the road somewhere and succumb to the vestiges of hunger and thirst, or wallow in the vestiges of hunger and thirst, and finally come to my ultimate demise as someone that doesn't want to do anything for themselves. That's something that I revel in from time to time. I could feel my emotions and try to heal myself. I could be productive and try to go to some doctor or therapist to help me with my problems, or some counselor to help put me back on a good course. I could seek the help of others. I could move into I could go see my mother and get help from her, although that would be a very gamma thing to do, because gammas and omegas, often are in their mother's basement. Or I could just, find work and just put my best foot forward and just try. But I don't want to do any of that. And that makes me a gamma. So here's the third comment that I made. And this Vox actually responded to. I say, what you're referring to as alpha behavior is merely insecurity. And Vox responds, no, it's not, but it's always nice to hear from the gammas. So this is where he calls me out as a gamma. And I say that, knowing that it would, most people who follow this guy, or Vox Day himself, would probably say that I'm a gamma. In fact, most people that argue with Vox at all apparently seem to be gammas. Like another guy that I follow, another guy that's been called out as a gamma, has argued some of the points that he's making. And Vox sticks to his guns and says, if you argue with what I'm saying, the truth of what I'm saying, the truth of what I've discovered, then you are exhibiting yourself, your gamma tendencies. You are showing your true colors as a gamma. And this is one of the things, if I haven't mentioned it earlier, this is one of the personality traits of a gamma, is that they reject everything to do with the alpha, and they reject the hierarchy. They want to be an alpha, but they hate the alpha. And because they're at the bottom of the hierarchy, they hate themselves and they want to be higher up. And because they're jealous and envious of others, they just reject the whole institution altogether and say, oh, this is all a bunch of nonsense. I know what I'm doing. I'm a great guy. So he says, no, it's not, but it's always nice to hear from the gammas. I thought, Vox is a little sarcastic, but I see what you're trying to do. He wants to point out that I'm a gamma, and so I'm falling into this. Um, it makes sense that I would argue with what he has to say because of my gamma nature. So he says, no, it's not, but it's always nice to hear from the gammas. And I respond, sure it is. In other words, sure it is merely insecure behavior that, uh, or that alphas are expressing insecurity in their position, in the position that they've sought for themselves. And so I say, sure it is. The only reason you would want to reach the top of the pecking order is because of the desire to avoid the pain of feeling small. In response, Fox says, you're projecting your own gamma reasoning onto us. In his mind, it's only gammas that think like me. In his mind, people that want to rebel from the hierarchy are just rejecting the truth of what is. And that's true, going back to what is truth. I will not accept the idea that competition is inherent to God's universe. And I don't think that's because I'm a gamma. I think that's because I can't see it. I can't see competition as loving in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sure for Vox, somehow he has this, he's woven the idea of competition into God's universe. I think at one point he suggested this idea that we're all sinful. He does make this point. I mean, like, I think he believes that Jesus is God. So he probably believes in the Trinity, which I do not believe in. I believe that Jesus is not God, but a human being. But basically, he calls Jesus Lord. To him, Jesus is Lord. And Jesus, you either accept Jesus or reject Jesus. And in rejecting him, you reject our Lord and Savior. And in so doing, you will, continue down the path of sin. I don't believe that, believing that Jesus is my Lord and Savior is what keeps me from sin. I believe that Jesus is not my Lord and Savior because he's merely a human being. He's merely a teacher that, God was nice enough to help inspire and because of Jesus' own desire to know about God and learn the truth of the universe. We have this great gift of knowledge. I mean, most people know who Jesus is. Most people know at least a little bit what Jesus has said. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful wisdom, what he shared with all of us. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. I mean, it is the gateway for many people to accept a more moral life, to read Jesus' words, to hear what he had to say, and to attempt to live accordingly. So I'm not saying that people reject the idea that he is a teacher and a deliverer of wisdom, but I'm suggesting that you get it wrong when you then conclude that Jesus is your Lord and Savior. It's funny, I was watching a stream that Owen Benjamin made yesterday or so, 2 days ago, and he was passionately talking about all the people that come to him because, Owen does look into conspiracies, and he looks into, the lies that are presented to us, and he attempts to uncover, what the truth is behind the lie. And he attracts many people who are kind of infuriating to him. These people ask what the mark of the beast is. Are we all going to get computer chips in our brain or something? And is cryptocurrency, the mark of the beast, and all these prophecies in Revelation, and Jesus has to come back to save us because we're going down, and Owen rejects that, and he says, you can't allow yourself to give into this ridiculous notion that civilization is going down, and Jesus has to come back to save us, because you have to act, you have to move forward, you have to attempt to try and just do something. And what Owen does, and I respect him for this, is that he's built this beautiful estate where he's growing food on his property, and he has like gardens everywhere, and I don't love alcohol, but he's even has the goal of making alcohol from his own hops or whatever one day. I mean, I can appreciate, I don't appreciate where he's going with that. I can appreciate the fact that he's doing something. Doing something is always going to be better than the choice that I've made, which is to do nothing. It's always going to be better to do something, because you spit out the lukewarm, drink, hot or cold. If you do something loving, you've chosen action. If you do something unloving, you've still chosen action. But when you choose inaction, you can't be led anywhere. You can't grow at all. And so that's why I see, very, very hard times ahead for myself, because I'm choosing inaction. And I almost want to admonish other people that would agree with the choices that I've made, because, I see, yourself attracting more misfortune if you've settled, for inaction. But anyway, I was watching the stream, and, Owen was saying, you have to act. You can't accept, defeat. You have to move forward. Jesus is not going to save you. Don't believe that Jesus is going to come back to save you. And I found myself agreeing with him. But the problem is that he already believes that Jesus has saved him. And that definitely is going to inhibit yourself. If you believe that Jesus has saved you, if you believe that Jesus is your Savior, it's true that he brought knowledge to people and he brought the truth. But his life and example, and even his death, and the blood that he spilled, does not mean that you are saved. And I don't want to belabor this point, but it should be obvious to everyone that any sinful action you take in this free will universe, you will bear the brunt of the consequences of your action. No, why would God create a system or create a universe in which you feel pain when you make a conscious decision to do something unloving? When you make a conscious decision to do something evil, why would God create a feedback system where you actually experience pain from doing that, where you actually experience misfortune? The only reason why God would do that would be to clarify and teach. God wants to show you that there is, not only, you inflict suffering not only on the world, not only do you inflict suffering on others, but you also will feel a negative consequence when you perform an evil deed. Why would he do that if he doesn't want us to learn from our decisions? Why would God send a savior to pay for all of our sins? What about the sins we have yet to commit? What happens after you have accepted Jesus as your personal savior, that he saved you from all your sins, and then you commit another sin? Do you have to accept Jesus again as your personal savior? No. Most people say you just have to do it the one time. You just have to be born again once. Um, and incidentally, that's not what being born again is. Being born again is becoming at one with God. It's not believing and expressing that Jesus is your Savior. That has nothing to do with it. So I think it's a problem that Fox worships Jesus as as his Lord. You know, it's interesting that Jesus was not a competitive person, and didn't seem to at any point express anger. In fact, the only time that he expressed anger when he was when he overturned the tables of the tax collectors and the money changers in the temple. But if you listen to what Jesus actually says now, that's not true. Uh, after Jesus became at one with God, he had no reason at any point to become angry, because the only reason that you at any point become angry is out of a rejection of your fear. It's actually more to do with not having one of your emotional addictions met. So if you want validation from someone, or if you want someone to, or if you expect someone to respond to you in a certain way, and you don't get that response that you're looking for, you will get angry. Now you could just feel the fear, or the sadness of how it feels to not get what you want, not get your way, but instead you don't. And so the inevitable emotion that will arise in you after that is anger. That's where anger comes from. It makes complete sense. It's obvious. And that's why I wonder, when Zachary and Bradley, you know, told me something that I didn't want to hear, why I got angry with him. I had an expectation that was not delivered to me. So, one should wonder, after seeing that Jesus was not spiteful, was not competitive, you know, that if Jesus was this perfect model of a man, then shouldn't we also aspire to be as loving and as firm as he was? Now, I think Vox is being firm, but I think he's also angry, and I think he also wants to remain competitive. So I'll finish what I said. So Vox said, "You're projecting your own gamma reasoning onto others. You should not do that. Everyone else does not think like you." Agreed. I say, I give him what he called later in one of his streams a wall of text. I could say the same thing to you about your reasoning. I suggest you keep an open mind, and you can see how kind of arrogant I'm sounding here. I suggest you keep an open mind about what I'm saying. The fact of the matter is that all of these words you're using, which came out of descriptions of animal behavior, and are now used to describe human behavior, only describe emotional injuries in the human being, no matter what classification you use. So whether it's gamma or omega or sigma or anything else. There is no place for emotional injury in God's universe, and God is continually attempting to get us to acknowledge our problems so that we can fix them. You said it isn't moral. So at one point in this stream, he talks about how it's not about morality. Like this social sexual hierarchy that he's presenting, it has nothing to do with morality. He says it's just what is. And so I say, everything has to do with morality. The truth and reality here is that the so-called alphas are trying to deny their pain by escalating to the top of a social pecking order. The gammas are trying to deny their pain by avoiding society. I'm not denying that these things occur, but to suggest that they are inherent to human behavior is wrong. It is what Christians refer to as sin, or, quote, missing the mark. This relates to morality because it is incumbent on us to realize our moral failings, repent, and live in bliss and harmony with her laws. Now, here I went, waxing on about, my beliefs to this man who has no interest in what I have to say. And I do, profess some regret for having done that. But I'm kind of glad that I could express how I feel. I mean, while I do see some of these traits in myself and others, and while I do appreciate how he's, studiously expressed himself, or expressed what he's found, and he is a very intelligent person. I'll give him that. And I do believe that I have something to learn from. While I do appreciate that, I have a problem with him not calling out these traits as problems. He doesn't seem to think that philandering among alphas is a problem, or his own philandering as a sigma. Because sigmas get a lot of tail, or women, as it were. That's somehow okay. Like, I assume that did happen, and he does admit to looking for a lot of different lovers. And I'm not saying that I'm above that, because I do lust after a lot of different women myself. So I definitely have problems myself, but I'm not going to present the idea that that's okay. I believe now in what, and this is the hypocritical thing again. Is it hypocritical to say that I believe in what Jesus is saying about soulmates, and then do nothing to find my own soulmate? Because that's what I'm actually doing. So maybe I have to change my wording a little bit and say that while I believe Jesus is correct, that every human being has a soulmate, and it is our destiny to find that soulmate, and we can find our soulmate if we practice our desire and strongly desire and long for him or her. That even while I believe that, I do not do that myself. So I have the belief that it's right, that he's correct, and yet I don't believe him enough to actually practice that. So maybe I should find another word, or maybe I should shut up. But that's where I disagree with Fox. I disagree with this idea that, where, like he says, that it's okay. He doesn't admonish someone who is looking for different women. He doesn't admonish the proclivity of the alpha to womanize and philander. I really have to look up what philander means, because I'm using it so much without being sure. Of a man readily or frequently entering into casual sexual relationships with women. Okay, so I was right. So he doesn't admonish the alpha, or even the sigma, or even the beta for philandering with different women. He seems to think that it's just the quality of their I got very self-conscious, dealing with some earwax, and so I'm stopping what I'm saying. It's just a quality of their rank and their position that they tend to want the more women and to philander. And I would much rather point out the fact that it is sinful to do that, and it's something that you ought to work on. And what's the alternative to looking for a lot of different women? So I felt the need to respond to him. Meanwhile, I think I am portraying a lot of gamma-like tendencies. Now, I don't agree that I am falling into one of his, I'm not going to agree that I am a gamma, because all these gamma traits that he characterizes, these are sins and part of my sinful nature that I am doing. And I don't now want to be I don't even want to be a delta or a beta. I want to simply remove all of these emotional injuries that I have. I want to remove these negative traits that I have. I don't want to remove the gamma tendencies that I have and then become an alpha. No, I want to completely eliminate all my sinful nature and tendencies. So I hope that brings some clarification. You're free to agree with, Vox, and disagree with me. I can see how, he can present this structure and then say that everyone that contends with the points that he is a member of that structure, you know, and is not seeing the truth because of their own subversive, rebellious nature. Um, I can see why you would think that, but I personally believe that he has not desired to find certain truths, and so he's not found certain truths. The truth that Jesus is not a member of the Trinity. Jesus is just a man that we actually can emulate. And we can actually um, uh, not portray, but actually, embody the same loving traits that he embodied. We become ethical, moral creatures from a state of being fallen. I think that's a much more profound truth than what he is suggesting. But I do appreciate that, some of what he says is meaningful. I do appreciate that any secret secret king syndrome that I have needs to be stamped out. If I want to have any kind of authority, I should know that it comes from actual dedication, passion, and an actual work ethic. Um, if I want to do anything in this world, I can't keep on working begrudgingly. I can't keep on hating what I do while doing it. I have to have a dedication and passion for what I'm doing. That's real. So I do appreciate some of what he says, and I do take some of what he says. I just think that he's wrong with not pointing out these things as sins and putting them out as just the reality of the social sexual hierarchy. It's just what is, as he says. So I'm not sure if that's helpful to too many people. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I realize that if I keep on going with these tendencies that I have, I am inviting my own doom in life. I will transfer from this hellish position that I am here on earth to the same hellish position in the spirit world if I refuse to take care of myself. So, yeah, I wonder if this has been meaningful for anyone. I'm coming up to 3 hours and 30 minutes, and I'm quite sure that I don't know too many people that do a stream as long as this or longer, and so I'm going to end here at 3 hours and 30 minutes. Thanks for watching. I do want to remind you that much of what I say and much of my delivery is from a state of being flawed. I don't believe that everything that I've said is flawed, but I talked about the issue of hypocrisy, and I would only say that it's up to you to use your own discernment and to gain what you can. And if anything, hopefully this was helpful as a character study of someone who really ultimately desires their own destruction and their own degradation in life. So I'll end it there, and farewell.